Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the now named Bull or Bear. How you doing?
Bull or Bear? I'm very well, thank you, sir.
We've gone for a not at all cliche title for this. Our weekly review of the corporate marketing world. So, first of all, this week, look, we've definitely spoken about this a little bit before, but I thought it was just nice to actually pick out an example, have a little link for you to look at. I am bullish on the corporate podcast.
Okay.
Much like this one here, but not because I'm promoting us. It's actually a little bit linked to my second one. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole doing some research, and I found, let's get this right, the Northern Mining Podcast, TNM, which as you look it out is, it has other namesakes like it, which is not just up north, lad, in Yorkshire. It is Canadian mining and kind of news around. So it's a very much a niche piece, and a lot of the podcast is just sort of talking through the news, but it's this nice idea that if it's your thing, if it's your sector, if it's relevant, it's nicely narrated, great presenter, just talk you through the news. You put it on in the background. I'm not saying you'd sit there, it's an hour long. You're not going to sit and listen to the whole thing religiously.
How often is it, sorry?
I think it's weekly.
Okay.
Weekly podcast. You know, making sure you're up to date with the latest bits, news around the industry and around the world. They talk about, you know, happenings in Africa and some of the conflicts there and where it was going and, you know, that kind of sum up. And so that's nice. You can put it on passively. You'll pick up tidbits from that. Great. Yeah. But he then has an interview. And one of the reasons I found this, the rabbit hole, was doing some research because you are off to PDAC in a few weeks.
I am.
Toronto. And they had, let's get his name right, Jeff Killeen on there, who is part of the organising. I think he actually is responsible for the agenda there. I hope I've got that right, Jeff, for PDAC. And then this week he had Neil Woodyer on, who's the CEO of Aris Mining. So featuring people. Now, the key here is, the podcast itself is great, but the lens I want to put on it is I think it's really hot for those guys to have come and showcased, right? So as a CEO of a big mining company, where do you get an opportunity to calmly listen to a guy? Perhaps, as much as I want to credit Jeff for being interesting, and he very much was, perhaps the insight you'd be less likely to get was this Neil interview, right? He was in then became a merchant banker, then set up Endeavour Mining, and it's rolled on. Learned all about the fact that he's kept most of his executive team with him for 25 years.
Oh, really?
All sorts of bits that you go, this is really clever way of getting a potential retail investor type person much more interested in your company.
So podcasts obviously have sort of opened up a huge market of niche interests. Yeah. And is now, like you're saying, a sort of a new platform for
so much better
CEOs.
Than we keep moaning about the earnings call, right? The insight you got from that you wouldn't get from their very stage sort of thing. It was just, Bull of the Week was just a really nice example, worth listening to, by the way. He really is a fascinating guy, interesting story. But you went from, I've heard of Aris, they're in the landscape, but we do working with clients too. I'm actually really engaged with this. I'm really engaged with your story. I've got a human story, which is so what we want in the world. And this is the opportunity.
I actually think something you said, which is really interesting, is the passive listening to that. I think I've passively listened to radio and podcasts for years now. And actually, I think, ultimately, when you're at work, you might not have an hour to intensely listen to a work thing, right? But I think the passive listening is really important.
And a lot of people will be the sort of commute to work, put it on in the background while they're, whatever is going on. It's great.
And as I keep on saying, and I'm going to keep on saying it now, an hour's worth of content at the top of the content pyramid, being able to take little sound bites from it, being able to do PR publications from it, etc. It makes complete sense, especially with time-poor CEOs.
Yeah. Well, I just think really nice opportunity to get an insight. So
great.
First one, bullish on the guest speaker slots, I suppose. It's been really niche of podcasts.
It's a bull.
It's a bull. The second one is incredibly closely linked to this, and because it's all part of the research I was doing. But it got me thinking, because this is also, I'm almost going to challenge you with this one, because I think the problem with this bull is that it is actually seen as a bear, and that is the wider topic of nuclear energy.
Oh, okay. Yep, like it.
This was slightly picked up for me on Trump tariffs. I was thinking, why has he slapped Canada with a bunch of tariffs? You've got to try and work this out. I mean, 60% of their oil's coming down from there cheaply, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the best possible access to clean uranium that America's going to get would be coming down from Canada. So it sort of fell into the rabbit hole that way. And found myself thinking, I am very bullish on nuclear energy, But I would suggest that the world is probably quite bearish and that they might have one of the biggest comms challenges of the next 5-10 years to reverse this. If you were to go up to most people and say nuclear, they'd probably say bomb, right? And you've got to reverse this into, oh, it's an opportunity for... Now, personally, we'll just go really super personal opinion for a second. I don't think it's the long-term future energy, but I think we need a transitionary one. This feels like an absolute gift. Relatively such a cleaner source, so much opportunity. But how do you present that carefully? And well, I think that's the challenge for an industry.
Full transparency, we are working with these companies to help sort of change that message, right? And I think nuclear has got a whole load of press recently because people are asking how the compute of AI is going to be powered for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And nuclear seems to be everybody's top pick to do that. And I completely agree. I think you could look at it, how they're going to do it, but what an opportunity for a marketing industry to sort of to lead on that message. Because like you say, obviously legacy reputation gives it a bit of, it's going to be a bit of a struggle.
Massively.
But actually, I think you already see that happening. I think the conversation around AI and how that's being powered, I think already it's permeating into sort of public consciousness.
Well, I think it's going to happen a bit. My supposition here is a little bit by positive brand association. Meta put out an RFP for small portable nuclear stuff to power. I think it's going to be brands like that take the edge off. And then people go, oh, hang on, I need to just engage with this rather than dismiss it. It's certainly, it has its challenges and pitfalls. Like fossil fuels, it's not completely green, but it just feels like an obvious transition. So I think that...
I love that one.
Bullish on it, but curious as to how the rest of the world come and join us there. And then you've just mentioned AI, so thank you for providing the segue into, unsurprisingly, we've got to talk about an AI. My final bull of the week is Spend Key. Alex, you better be watching this, seeing as we are now giving you a massive shout out, but a very good friend of yours, Alex Grundy. Just gave me such a nice insight this week into kind of my projection when we went back for the projections for the year was about, I think, enterprise AI coming to fruition. And we're not going to mention any of the other names involved, but we need to say a very large enterprise corporation challenged them to a real-time demonstration of AI working accurately and efficiently. They were submitted a bunch of invoices in different languages, pricing against, some at kilowatt hours and then some might be megawatt hours, and they needed to standardize and normalize it. They were not allowed to see it before this interview. They were given, I think he said 100 multi-language, multi-format pieces that the AI had to digest, turn into a standardized format and make available. They did it live. It worked. And you just go, you see, that's this tipping point. And we were talking about it. I said, he'd been working on that account for a long time. And I said, well, ironically, it's possibly a blessing it took them a while to get to the table because 9 months ago, it's like, yeah, you're right. 9 months ago, we couldn't. And it's like, this is this really exciting tipping point we're at here. So Spenky, worth checking out. Really cool, amazing company. This data processing is obviously going to be a really big part of it. But it also just a nice feed into, we are now seeing this useful day to day, just taking the time out.
It was exciting. From day one, Spend Key was created with AI in mind, right? It's an AI spend analytics tool. And I think the fact they've been so focused on that, they are a small, agile team, and they've been so focused on that specific niche using AI. I think they're really reaping the benefit now. I think what they seem to be doing is incredible. I think.
Yeah, just really nice to see it. But just a little insight, by the way, is it may be of interest. It's using 4 or 5 different models to achieve that accuracy.
This is where I start to think there's the bearish thing coming. There's got to be something about that. Anyway,
I think that will get simpler. That's what's giving them the edge. They're the ones clever enough to stitch that together. It may get easier for them over time. But okay, there you go. Right, so now we're going to get bearish. We've seen a couple of these involved with accidents, and I thought I'd get your take on. For me, I'm still pretty unsure where Boeing go from here.
Okay.
No, but we always come at this from a marketing comms perspective. I'm not worried about the business solution that they need to find as well. But I had two. Basically, I'm going to frame this as 2 questions, see your take on it. Because as a personal opinion, it has never occurred to me to look up or choose any flight based on the aeroplane that is going to be taking me there. So I would suppose that it's not really such a big deal to Boeing on that level. In theory, And it may be that I'm an anomaly.
Still got a 15-year waiting list, don't they?
That aside. But then on the flip side of it, I would suggest if I was buying for EasyJet or whoever it is, this would be a very big priority because I wouldn't want to be associated with the bad press that comes out of an accident. And I'm kind of curious as to what your take would be.
The first place I went to was, okay, as marketer, yes, consumers, us, we don't make those decisions. And even we were talking about on our other podcast, driving consumers to make the decision for businesses. I don't even think it can happen, can it? Because they're too customized for every airline. However, the first place I went to was just the share price, actually. As you know, if you are a retail investor, just the share price and all the PR and the news that comes out of that, I think has a larger seismic shift on the company as well. But yeah, I would agree. I think Boeing, we've had this before. There are only two main players in this industry.
Well, Mr. Deregulation Trump might completely scupper that for them.
I don't know.
You're right. In the long term, I suggest that protects them. But let's pretend they don't have the protection. I think you've got to... I would almost argue that the B2B to C, check out our other podcast, Play That Was Your Hot this week, one of your hots, could actually be a really clever way of getting out of this.
I would agree. And I actually think, considering how
take it head on
badly
and be like,
that story played, a door fell off mid-flight.
Massive,
I actually don't think from a marketing point of view, that is such a big corner to turn. I just don't. Oh. I think you're right. I think the B2B to C play sort of, they're going to have to put a lot of time into their PR function as well as and generate some real B2B to C content.
Yeah.
I think that could be turned around relatively quickly.
You could own it, and if anything, turn it into the advantage of being, well, once you've made the mistake, you've learned from it type of a narrative, and we're now going to be better than everybody else.
There have been bigger fools that have been turned around before.
There certainly have. Okay, next one. This is quite good because you managed to wipe out an entire industry in our last podcast, and I'm going to take out an entire stock exchange. I have no idea where the London Stock Exchange goes from here. It is. The last year was the worst year ever for the London Stock Exchange in listings. This year, I had a little look through some of the companies that were thinking of listing.
Shein?
Sorry?
Isn't Shein going to be on London?
Let's see.
Okay.
It just can't seem to raise any interest or excitement, despite actually FTSE 1's been kind of doing okay. It still holds some really good blue chip companies, which is why I wanted to bring it up, because I think it's a narrative issue as opposed to a structural one. I think a lot of the companies that make up the biggest on the FTSE 1 and even the 250 are generally pretty blue chip, dividend paying kind of companies. But they've totally lost the magic sparkle and the hype that we see from the American tech companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's an industry thing. It's not what we're talking about here. Is the American tech companies are exciting and new. You've got like companies that are only 15 years old, whereas a lot in European markets, especially London, it's mature.
And you could say, really woe is me, I can't help that, I'm the FTSE. Or you could grab that, and I think they could create a story.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. But I suppose they're more mature industries. We're talking energy. Right, we're talking banking, finance.
But new energy isn't going there now. So new energy is now going somewhere else. The problem now is because there's no excitement generally, they haven't got the money floating around.
My question back to you is, how do you solve that? You can't go to individual companies. What I'm hearing from that is they don't seem to think there's any immediate benefit, certainly to the stock exchange itself, to be able to do that. Is there any sort of mechanic where the stock exchange and the companies that list on it partner together to sort of do an overall sort of part?
Well, they do that a bit. No, I think it's possibly plays neatly into, it's almost like I've teed this up, engaging more with retail investors. So fundamentally, I would suggest that precisely for the reason you said, lots of more established sort of blue chip, slightly boring, mature companies means that they've only ever really worked on trying to appeal to institutional type money. They've never tried and therefore succeeded in creating any hype, which means you don't end up with a Tesla at wildly overvalued. But the fact is it's a sort of chicken and egg, that one has caused the other. But now we sit at an opportunity, I think, for them to grab that narrative, to engage a whole generation of investors in the UK. That's what we're passionate about. America is not the only place. We have amazing, engaged, intelligent people, loads of entrepreneurs. Met a couple of young guys this last couple of weeks over here. All of them, I want to move to London, I want to go and build things. It's like there is excitement. It's not being tapped. All we hear is the depressing side at the moment. Well, maybe we could flip that around and go.
I know. I totally agree in the premise. I totally agree in the premise. My question and my sort of who leads that? Who's the person that? Because there's a lot of stuff. That's a huge. It's not like in America where you've got individual companies off their own back are creating this, and sort of tech companies are obviously using tech to be able to promote themselves. What's the central point for everyone to pull together and sort of create a holistic rebrand or reapproach?
Well, for me, the LSE are going to have to take it on. I don't think that the New York Stock Exchange had to. I think that happened, as you say, because the companies on there are so hyped anyway. So that means it's on them now to A, invest in creating a narrative, and B, probably find the right partner and offer them incredible terms to make them come in and create the hype together, as you say, partner up with an exciting company that could get retail interested and get a new generation interested. But it's just a theory.
I totally agree. I
was super bearish on LSE generally. I found myself really depressed by that and thinking maybe we should write to them.
It sounds to me like they could use us, actually.
That's exactly what I thought. So there you go.
Just putting it out there, we could turn that all around for you.
And we'd love to. So my last one is a sad bearish.
Oh, good.
Because I used to get a lot of joy and I used to get a lot of insight from this. But the All In podcast.
Good riddance. Good riddance.
Reaper's victim of its own success written all over this. I'm trying to work out how long I've been listening to that. It's a few years now. It's longer than you realise. I do not want David Sachs to credit the fact that his leaving is the reason it's gone. It's a factor, but the truth is that his political ambitions has politicised that.
It's always been politicised, that thing.
I don't think to the same degree.
Not to the same degree.
It started for me as being very interesting to get, to your point in Hot or Not, behind the scenes-esque feel to some very big venture capital players. How are they making decisions about the entrepreneurs they want to invest in, the companies? Where do they think those companies are going? It strikes me they have a very unusual insight into that. They're in the heart of Silicon Valley, in the heart of a lot of the stuff that we aspire to do ourselves and have a lot of fun working with. And I really enjoyed that. And now it is basically just a nothing but politically motivated, and it's just become super boring. I've just completely switched off. So there you go.
No, and their new guests that they're replacing Sachs with every week seem to be a sort of an extension of that. You know, they just seem to be a mouthpiece for what they want to say. And, you know, I do still enjoy the podcast, but, you know, Chamath completely rug pulled me with Virgin Galactic. So I've never been.
Personally, I hate it. But the other one, so instead, in its place, we slide in BG Squared, Bill and Brad.
Okay, heard.
Is a good one. They've both been guests on All In the past and decided to set up.
Brad. Okay, that guy. Interesting.
Only because I think it's BG Squared. If I've got that wrong, it's here. But it's just a little bit more market oriented, which is what I wanted from those guys, right? So I think, by the way, as we said before, this is the opinion of the week, and I might love it again if they go back to service as usual. But right now,
taking the temperature, I would agree. And you know, I mean, I just want to throw in there that I still think for easily.
I thought you were going to say I still think Virgin Galactic is a great investment. Help me pump this stock.
The best easy digestible podcast for me is still Prof G.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Prof G Market. Sorry, it is. It's every single week.
So long as you listen to Ed more than Scott.
Crikey.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much for joining us on episode 2. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much, guys.